Well, you've all been warned. Okay. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming. I'll be speaking today on the power of community. This is the talk of the month, and I guess this is the capstone lecture. So, just to preface, I'd like to start off by saying I truly believe that spiritual topics should not drop into politics. Give unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and give unto God what is God's. But these days, we really can't discuss community without acknowledging that political views have permeated so many points of our society that we might feel a civil war might be imminent, especially if you listen to the news. Our communities are seeing divisions across our work life, our friends, and even our families, especially our families. Full transparency, I am a hardcore liberal, a big former supporter of Bernie. Just take me as with a grain of salt, given that that perspective. I will tell you that while my brother and I were never very close, by way of example of what I've just said about family, my brother and I were never very close when we were young, but we grew to become extremely close after several years of therapy, and really friend and family. We as brothers were. Then sometime around 2016, 2017, my brother started expressing views I considered alarming, like dangerous to the very concepts of freedom and the Constitution. I couldn't, in good conscience, relate with someone that was supporting the downfall of individual freedoms and society. And so I broke contact with him. That was my doing. I refused to talk to him. And over time, I just dismissed out of hand as, part of the basket of deplorables. Anyone that, fell in, not that I ever want to be associated with Hillary, but that's another story. So one day my brother calls me. He's extremely overweight and he fell on the ice and broke his leg in a couple of places, and his wife could not pick him up. He was stranded and he lives in the middle of nowhere. I immediately dropped what I was doing. I ran and I helped him, got him to the hospital. And on the way home, I thought to myself, what was the point of me refusing to talk to him when I was going to be right there at the worst moment? Why did I have to wait until the worst moment to show love to someone I cared about? In spite of this, that these topics were destroying community. So, I then looked at it deeper. Over time, I realized that President Mr. Magoo was doing many things that he was doing many of the things like war, building Trump's wall, and helping corporations that I feared the Tangerine Palpatine was going to do. Now, for those, since only a few of you laughed, this is a Star Wars reference. Okay. Palpatine is the emperor of the dark side, and a tangerine is orange. Now, we have arrived. Okay. So what I came to realize is that these narratives are being pushed, that it like obnoxious, manipulating parents, if you will. Government and corporations are making the children decide which parent they love more. And the children get into a war with each other. It's not the child's fault. It's the manipulation of the parents. These divisions in our communities are the result of a carefully orchestrated, what psychology calls mass formation. Also, if that doesn't ring a bell, it's somewhat similar to mass hypnosis, or the more accurate, mass psychosis. Think about this. People are unable to take a detached, critical look at their beliefs. They are immediately dismissive, just like I was. Oh, that's it. You crossed that line, excommunicado, right? Ring the bell, close the book, blow out the candle. All right. So people are willing to abandon their former ethics. When in my life did I ever think the Democratic Party would turn into war hawks? No, don't have peace, then he'll win. We should keep fighting till the last dead Ukrainian. And then people become increasingly more fearful and radically intolerant of dissident voices. In its final stage of extremeness, may God help us, we never get there, but it's not uncommon for even parents to turn in their dissident children or vice versa. Now, you may think that's extreme, but later on, I'll give you an example of something I heard on TV. So what are the conditions for this setup for mass formation? Well, for one, most important, loneliness, isolation, disconnection from society, and a disconnection from nature due to technology or pandemic. Second, a generalized free-floating anxiety. There's just a frustration in the way life is going on, and a certain edge of aggression, like you're not going to put up for it, and you'll start a fight over something small because, damn it, we're going to make a stand somewhere for something because the world is just out of control. I just have this anxiety over everything. At that point, the population is now ready to be fed, traditionally from government and or corporations, an issue. And the strategy of how to fix it. Why cause mass formation? Well, when society is strong, it's hard for the government to move the mass agenda. To move an agenda, the community bonds must be broken. So society fights itself and doesn't unite to demand change from our government administration. These conditions lead to totalitarianism, where government and industry leaders control the public and political narrative, and also society's views by an overwhelming censoring of dissonant voices. So, our free-floating anxiety is then attributed to that issue, giving us a false sense of control. I knew something was going on. That's what's been bothering me. Now I can give focus to it. I'm connected to a movement, though not to society, just a narrative. At this point, and I'm sure you guys have experienced it, even a well-presented rational argument will be dismissed in the face of fact. Of course, I'll get into that later. But instead of having a discussion, remember we used to have those? All right. Instead, it's immediately countered with narrative talking points fed by the government, the corporate media, and the internet, where any counter arguments to the facts being presented are censored. I'll give you an example. All right. There are certain charged words out there. Notice your reaction when I say the following. Ivermectin. Now, I haven't said anything about other than the medicine's name. I haven't spoken of its efficiency, effectiveness. I haven't addressed anything along those lines, but each one of you, if you're not living under a rock, probably already has your back up in a formed opinion about what it is. I rest my case. Now, just out of curiosity, to push this forward, please raise your hand if you have known that ivermectin is horse paste. There's everyone. Thank you. There we go. So I know I'm going to get one hand raised, but let's see this now. How many of you are aware that it's a miracle drug given an award by the Nobel Peace Prize for medicine and is told by the World Health Organization that it is one of 30 medicines that must be in every doctor's toolkit? I got 3. Now, how is it that the news I mean, it's not that they mentioned it's horse paste once or included it along with other facts. It was broadcast far and wide, and you might as well have said you've seen aliens if you say anything about it. They took Joe Rogan as the poster child. They changed his filter to green. Didn't tell you, stuck it on the web. Now, I'm still not saying anything about the efficiency or effectiveness of the drug. But if this doesn't raise a massive red flag in your head and what's being told, well, then I want to warn you about another liquid that is taking lives every day. People are ingesting the liquid found in toilets. Okay, this liquid has been empirically proven to kill thousands of people on the Titanic, and hundreds of people, hundreds of swimmers every year are dying from this liquid. My strongest advice, if you follow the science and the statistics that I've presented, is to stay far away from water if you want to live. All provably true. And you were worried about me. Good for you. All right. Now I just have to find where I am because I had too much fun. So, all right, so far we talked about the conditions that lead to totalitarianism. We spoke of our generalized free-floating anxiety, the swallowing of a narrative and giving talking points to it, like we're rooting for our football team against another football team fan. Now, the third point I'll point out is that People will defend their cause heroically. They have contempt for those that don't join the unifying narrative. Absolutely all media and all internet says it's this way. If you don't follow that, you're anti-community. You're a dissident and should be censored and squashed. Now, I don't say you have to agree with people, but part of freedom is giving, not pre-masticating people's food and giving them the fully packaged thing of what to think. Put everything out there, and the freedom is to allow us, usually when you see the full spread of info, you have a better sense of being able to form your own opinion. There is something wrong going on here. I feel like V in the middle of that movie having a nice chat with people. If the crimes of our government go unnoticed to you, and it's not the country, it's certain people in it. God bless our country. No, the country needs to be protected and saved. Don't get me wrong on that. There's internecine fighting among the agencies. We don't have a united government. That's the big thing. So there is no room for middle ground. People will feel it's their moral duty to attack the character and foundation of dissonant voices. In its final stage, this leads to discrimination and direct or indirect extermination. Sound extreme? I agree. Want some proof? I will tell you, one of my most cherished people to listen to is Noam Chomsky. If ever there was an Ivy League bastion of liberalism, it is him. This is what he said during the COVID outbreak, when it was already being made clear through statistics and announcements that the jab did not stop the transmission. He said, anyone who does not get the injection should be pretty much banned from society. To which the question was asked, how are people supposed to eat and live? And the response was something along the lines of, let them die. This is a liberal who, I'll ask again, when in the face of history has a liberal ever supported censorship? If you don't support it now, it's the platform. Now they say it's for the good of society because you're getting rid of hostile views. But regardless of whenever something was introduced, when have you not seen it turns to suppress the most vulnerable and poor of society? I look back and there's no point in history where I can think anyone that sponsored censorship ended up on the right side of history. So how do they break community bonds? Oh, I'm doing a good job. Everyone looks uncomfortable. See, I warned you. You should have run. Okay. How to break community bonds. Isolate one issue at a time and focus it on it exclusively. Keep in mind, each side will focus on its own, because the two sides work together invisibly, although they appear to be opposites. Make it relevant to each person through fear, whether that is a sense of security being threatened, or the dangers of certain sexual expression, or fear of your finances. But they know the heart to tug, right? Right. Norm, an older guy, susceptible to a number of comorbidities. He had, kill them all. So you polarize it. There's no room for middle ground. Either you're for us or against us, as a famous president said it. Control the narrative where counter arguments are censored so that so many sources are quoting disinformation talking points, it's accepted as fact. To this day, the doctors that invented the RNA technology and have spoken out as to what it really can and cannot do have been censored because it doesn't follow the government narrative. Consider this please, former CIA director William Casey said in a quote, "We know," this is the CIA director, "we'll know when our disinformation is complete, when everything the American public believes is false." Consider this. About 7 corporations own outright all big news organizations. They control the stopping of any news that's not in their interest. Fortunately, I know that corporations have our best thoughts at heart. So we're safe, right? And the government, right? I mean, each and every one of you know you're safe, right? Your Social Security's there for you. We're going to be getting single payer health care and we're going to get $17 an hour and all that good stuff, right? So the news controls all of this. They also own indirectly our 3 branches of government through lobbyists and other forms. So what's the power of community? For one thing, it's the power of mass formation. What's an even greater power of community? The ability to bring society into the light. We know from A Course in Miracles that every thought has an effect on some level. Said another way, Dr. Masaru Emoto showed how water is shaped by the projection of a group of thoughts and emotions. And physicist Niels Bohr showed that at a quantum level, our thoughts create our reality. If our community can't stop the descent into late stages of this mass formation, get ready for no privacy 24/7, continued disinformation, and the also continued production of conflicting studies so that no one knows the truth. Just constant propaganda. To reverse this mass formation, the individuals in the community have to start recognizing it. Mass formation can only be stopped by a mass awakening in consciousness. Then we might realize that our true world is very different than the ways we've been taught to perceive it today. That in effect, we were fed an alternate truth, an alternate reality for longer than our lifetimes. This mass awakening is what I am attempting to contribute towards now by having you become aware of its dynamic and to what end those in power are using it to control us. We can only be divided if we allow it. We are acting like our government powers our community, but that is backwards. The power of our community powers our government. Here's a couple of techniques to break the mass formation spell. And I wish those that walked out had a chance to hear this instead of doing the very thing I described. Here's one technique. When dismissiveness, intolerance, and anger rise up in you, ask yourself, where is this response coming from? Self-reflection can bring a conditioned response out of your subconscious and into the spotlight where it can be evaluated from all perspectives by you. I'm not suggesting any conclusion you should come to. I may disagree with what you say, but I'll defend to the death your right to say it. All I'm hoping to do is stop an instant knee-jerk reaction that short circuits our ability to be self-reflective. Secondly, scammers and politicians try to create fear and a sense of urgency to manipulate you into their narrative. It's very important that when you are feeling fear, you become aware that you might be getting manipulated. As soon as you feel fear and the sense of urgency, before you're allowed to give into it if you want to, but before you do, take just a moment to consider if your buttons might be getting pressed so that you go a direction someone wants to manipulate you towards. For that moment, remain calm and force yourself to evaluate all perspectives. This is the circuit breaker that stops the conditioned reflex. This introduces the possibility of discussion, at least with yourself, which is all I'm asking. Now, truthfully, it's been noted in mass formations that presenting this information won't stop people from doing it. That's not my intent. My intent is that it has been proven that it at least stops the worst level of totalitarianism from kicking in. Meaning, at least we don't get to the point where people start snitching on their neighbors because they're being patriotic. You know, that we don't go all norm and say, let these groups die. Skip politics. That's all I'm asking for, regardless of what side you're on. Let's just take the edge off the most extreme of this game we're playing. The power of community is the strength of our neighbors banding together, because we live in a world where you might think you don't need anyone at the moment, but when grocery shelves become bare, your house is buried in 20 feet of snow, like California, there's blackouts, flooding, illness or injury like my brother, social or economic collapse, or even a toxic train derailment, if you follow the news, the community will find out that it takes a village. We will look past others' shortcomings and band together when the chips are down. Well, take a look at your chip stack. Why don't we band together now? That is what will help us thrive long before any centralized help can contribute to us. It is in our ability to decide how our local community will run and how we will support each local group that is a part of our community and its security and its finances, and protect its sexual expression in the community. United, community stands. Divided, we fall. As a final note, I just want to make it clear I've gone out of my way not to express any efficacy views on these politically charged medicines, just that those political views exist. Still, I've mentioned some words that could offend corporate sponsors of YouTube, as historically has been shown. And the censors of YouTube would be obliged to give Unity a strike unless I state something like the following. I'm not kidding, although this is my personalized version of it. Studies sponsored by corporations have proven that ivermectin is ineffective as a cheap and existing way to mitigate COVID effects, but that the COVID vaccine is safe and effective. It could greatly diminish the effects of COVID, which now presents as the common cold, or it can save your life. Your heart will swell. Your heart will swell and be all aflutter with pride that we in the US have access to the best medical treatment and medicines in the entire world. You know, it occurs to me now that total censorship is not required to maintain a corporate narrative. If we are already made scared enough to censor ourselves, you know, the only way a free democracy can thrive is by providing all information and then letting us as individuals and communities evaluate it and decide for ourselves. Thank you. And now, to bring this point home, a very important and serious song.